News.
And the mayor of Rochester Hills is among a group of mayors in Texas protesting the treatment of those kids.
All of this as there is new word that the Pentagon has just agreed to provide housing on military bases for up to 20,000 migrant children.
Our big story coverage begins with reporter Marcy Gonzalez outside a detention center in El Cajon, California, with a look at what's being done for the children.
From California to New York, 2,300 children separated from their parents at the border since May, waiting in facilities like this and in foster care with no timeline or clear plan to reunite them with their families.
These kids have been traumatized.
With the only images coming from inside these shelters provided by the government, 20 mayors from across the country showing up at this facility along the border in Texas, requesting a first-hand look and action from the administration.
Yesterday was the right thing to do, but it leaves as many questions unanswered as it resolves.
First Lady Melania Trump bringing her own questions to this shelter in Texas, making a surprise visit Thursday afternoon.
How many times they speak with their relatives?
Bianca Ortanes Lopez from El Salvador says she last spoke with her 8-year-old son Abel 2 months ago when she was detained, saying they told me to say bye to him. To this day, I don't know where he went. She is still hoping for a moment like this. 10-year-old Samuel separated from his father 8 months ago, silent and overwhelmed as he was finally reunited with his family in Guatemala.
It may be even difficult once they're reunited with their parents. It may take a long time for this trauma to be resolved and these children to be healed.
Another concern is how to make reunions like that possible, because right now there isn't an agency keeping track of where all of those parents and children are being held. Marcy Gonzalez, ABC News, El Cajon, California.
And the mayor of Rochester Hills is among that group of mayors in Texas today speaking out against the separation of children from their families. 7 Action News reporter Bethany Moore is live in Rochester Hills. And Bethany, Mayor Barnett spoke with you from Texas. What is he saying about his visit?
Well, he said it was just a very eye-opening experience to actually be down there at the border and see exactly what's happening. He said that more than ever it showed how important that they be there and help.
I think it's important to be at the center of those discussions if you want to be able to affect change.
And that's why Rochester Hills Mayor Brian Barnett traveled more than 1,700 miles to Texas.
The reason we were here was not to gain access to the facility, but was basically to encourage Congress to begin to move that in our cities, in Rochester Hills and other places across the country, this discussion about immigration is important.
15 mayors from multiple cities and states across the U.S. traveled there as part of the U.S. Conference of Mayors.
There's mayors from across the country, big cities, small cities, Republicans, Democrats, all with sort of a passion for bringing voice to this discussion of immigration in our nation.
Speaking from a facility in Tornillo today, each mayor spoke about what action they're looking for.
We need to find a better balance between our respect for the rule of law and the importance of human decency and compassion, especially as it relates to separating families. Mayor
Barnett says the president's actions yesterday are a step in the right direction, but there's still a lot of work for them to do.
So we hope that the president's executive order yesterday will start to change that, but it doesn't go, to reuniting the folks that have already been separated. So there's a lot of discussion. This is really a moving target.
Now, Mayor Barnett is on his way back here to Rochester Hills right now. He's expected to be back in town by tonight. Reporting live, Bethany Moore, 7 Action News.
All right, Bethany, thank you. And meanwhile, Time magazine is taking on the immigration crisis with its latest cover. It shows a 2-year-old Honduran girl crying for her mother, and it shows President Trump photoshopped in that picture, towering over her. The video of that child crying sparked outrage in the United States and across the whole country. The immigration practice, which has now been overturned.
Head to WXYZ.com for continued coverage of the big story, including a closer look at the Defense Department memo asking the Pentagon to make room for 20,000 migrant children on U.S. military bases. Other news tonight, MSU's interim president has finally apologized for the insensitive comments he made about a survivor of Larry Nassar's abuses. Tonight, the woman he was talking about is speaking to 7 Action News. 7 investigator Ross Jones live in the newsroom. Ross, what's she saying about the apology from the interim president?
Well, Dave, John Engler doesn't have many allies on the Michigan State campus these days, and if he was hoping that would change with today's apology, he will likely be disappointed.
When you have a pattern of attacking sexual assault survivors, continually saying, "I'm sorry," and not changing doesn't fix the problem.
John Engler's 11th hour apology came too late, and it's far too little. That's according to Rachel Den Hollander, a survivor of Larry Nassar's, who Engler disparaged in an email saying she probably received a kickback from her attorneys suing the school. In an apology issued this afternoon on the eve of a contentious board meeting where already 2 MSU trustees have called for Engler to resign, he finally apologized 8 days after his comments were made public. Said Engler, "A private email conversation of mine from April was made public. I didn't give it the consideration it warranted. That was a big mistake. I was wrong. I apologize." Today by phone, we spoke with Rachel Den Hollander.
This apology is coming on the heels of immense political pressure, and it is coming as a pattern of behavior.
Without ever naming Den Hollander, Engler said he knows his kickback comment hurt her deeply, and for that I am truly sorry, adding that when he arrived at MSU, he apologized publicly to the survivors on behalf of the university for the harm Nassar had done.
There have not been apologies for what happened at MSU. We have received apologies that it happened, with no recognition of the monumental failures that allowed Larry to flourish for over 20 years.
Trustees Brian Musalem and Diane Byram have already called for Engler to resign, but so far it seems that they're alone. Today we got the first sign that a majority of the board still supports Engler, saying in a statement he will remain the school's interim president.
What is more important to these trustees than doing the right thing? I don't have the answer to that question. Only they can answer it. But they are clearly prioritizing something more than children, and that is incredibly disturbing.
And you can read Engler's entire apology. We have posted it on our website at WXYZ.com. And I'll be in East Lansing tomorrow, bright and early, for a meeting of the Board of Trustees that begins at 8 a.m. Survivors of Nassar's are expected to be in attendance, and they plan to again call for Engler to step down. In the newsroom, Ross Jones, 7 Action News.
We look forward to that follow-up, Ross. Thank you so much. Well, when you hear about thieves stealing from gas station convenience stores, it's usually money. But when a woman and man walked into a store in Milford, they walked away with something else. 7 Action News reporter Simon Chowdhury shows you what they took and why police think they did it.
2 thieves casually walked into this speedway on Milford Road and walked out with more than $2,000 worth of cigarettes. Police believe this duo may have done this before.
You can see him loading cigarettes into a bag.
With the trash bag in hand, this man grabs 29 cigarette cartons as quickly as possible. How is he behind the register with no clerk? Well, this woman, police say, distracted the clerk, asking her to come from behind the counter to help her on the other side of the store. This happened 3 weeks ago at this speedway in Milford in the overnight hours, which means less customers and less employees. When the duo walks in, the man goes to the bathroom while the woman asks the clerk questions.
At that point, the male came out of the bathroom and started filling up a garbage bag, it looks like, with cartons of cigarettes.
$2,000 worth of cigarettes, according to police. The two quickly left and hopped into a maroon-colored SUV. Police believe they have done this before at stores in other cities in Metro Detroit. They tell us they could be part of a bigger ring. As for the cigarettes, police have a theory behind the motive.
These are getting sold probably down in Detroit, two-party stores.
And if you recognize either of the suspects, you're being asked to contact Milford Police. In Milford, Simon Chowdhury, 7 Action News.
Thanks, Simon. The first day of summer, spectacular, stellar, wonderful. Second, third days, not so much. We'll talk about when the rain arrives coming up in the forecast.
Left at the library, a Redford mother is demanding answers after her son's daycare forgot to bring him home from a field trip. Why Child Protective Services is getting involved.
And a trip to the Sleeping Bear Dunes takes a terrifying turn when she is bitten by one of the most venomous spiders in the U.S., the disfigurement she may be dealing with for the rest of her life.
And coming up next, new details in a disturbing animal abuse case involving an MSU faculty member. We'll show you the bizarre demonstration done today in court.
Before we begin with our next top story, we want to warn you this report may be hard to watch, and if there are little ones in the room, you may want to ask them to leave, because we're learning new details in the case of the MSU physicist accused of having sex with a dog. Today, Joseph Hattie was in an Ingham County courtroom to face bestiality charges. 7 Action News reporter Brian Abel joins us here in the studio now. And Brian, we heard from a man who says he witnessed Hattie touch that dog inappropriately.
And not only do we hear him talk about how he says Hattie sexually abused the dog, attorneys used a stuffed dog to show how. Again, this story is graphic, and the man was a confidential informant for investigators, testifying that he posted an ad on Craigslist as, quote, an outlet for a fantasy. He clarified for the court he was talking about bestiality and said Michigan State University health physicist Joseph Hattie responded to that ad. They eventually met up at Hattie's home, where both men allegedly molested Hattie's basset hound. Someone saw that ad on Craigslist, and that's what caught the attention of Ingham County Animal Control, who's investigating. They eventually arrested Hattie, took away the dog, and seized evidence, including an alleged picture of a man having sex with a dog, as well as multiple images on a computer of such acts. Now, the man on the stand today graphically talking about seeing Hattie fondle that dog.
I'm going to ask you if you would demonstrate for the court, please, exactly what you saw him do with his hands in regard to the dog flesh. You were in the front of the dog, petting the dog's head, is that correct?
Similar to this position.
Okay, and he comes behind with his hand, is that right?
He's over here reaching around like this, yes.
Now, that man that you saw was granted immunity for his cooperation in this case. The judge was expected to rule if Hattie would go to trial, but a key piece of evidence has been called into question. That selfie of who investigators believe to be Hattie having sex with a dog. It didn't have a clearly visible tattoo on his calf, according to Hattie's lawyer, while his client does have a large calf tattoo. Now, the judge says if there is photographic evidence that shows Hattie couldn't have committed this crime, it is not merely a question of fact. If convicted, Hattie could spend up to 15 years in jail, and this hearing period extended for 2 more weeks. Reporting live in studio, Brian Abel, 7 Action News.
Disturbing to see that man smiling on the stand, Brian. All right, thanks so much.